Last week in Ad Break, we had a really interesting discussion, and we didn't talk about it last week on air. You've had a bit of a chance to think about it. You just asked Nathan Lovett Murray this question, and it's the first time I've seen you taken aback. This is the question, and this is Nathan's answer.
Hey, Nath, I always like to ask your favourite or best Indigenous player that you've ever seen play the game.
I reckon, would that be you, Duck?
Hey?
Would that be you?
Would it be me? A very good question.
You was my favourite player growing up.
It is a very, very good question, Duck. You started to tell us a story last week that we were all gobsmacked by, and we decided not to talk about it on air because it was a thing about you and your family and being comfortable, but you've just said to us, no, let's have a chat about it now. So whether Nathan Lovett Murray had considered you to be of Indigenous background, that could have been the way that question and answer was interpreted. Tell us your story, mate.
Oh, well, I guess because Lindsay Gilby only found out only a year ago, and we were talking about
18 months ago,
the fact that he designed the Bulldog jumper. And we did talk about it last week, and Nathan just took me back because I certainly didn't think he was going to say me. But look, as a kid, Howie, as a very young child, we were considered, all of my dad's children were considered Indigenous, and I didn't know, and we didn't know whether that was true or not. So I've never really delved deep into it. But it's always sat in the background, and I've never ever spoken about it publicly. This is the first time I've ever told anyone about it, other than obviously my family and some really close friends know a little bit about it. But I've never delved into it. I do know that my dad's brothers' children and their children are all considered, and they all still live in Wagga Wagga. They're considered Indigenous, but I once again, my dad's no longer with us. My mum's no longer with us, and I don't know whether it was something that my dad had organised through Wagga connections at the time, because it was obviously, like in terms of the government, we were considered Indigenous because we got paid a certain amount of money for food and all that sort of stuff when we were kids.
So just to explain that to us, because I didn't even know that was something that took place, and you were telling us that last week. So your family would get a check.
I think it was I don't know how much Dad actually got, but all of us kids, I think it was like $2 every fortnight or every month, and it was an actual check. Now, Dad never gave that to us. I think he cashed it.
Right. So that was like an Indigenous welfare, for want of a better term, check?
I assume so, yes. And then when we moved from Wagga to Adelaide, we lived in a beautiful suburb called Smithfield, which is not a great suburb, Howard, but I played in an all Indigenous team at lunchtimes at that school. So, I was considered Indigenous at that school, but it's just something that I've never really I've definitely never spoken about, and it's not because I'm ashamed to be Indigenous,
no.
if I am, or anything like that. I've just never spoken about it, never felt the need to talk about it. But I have had many discussions with a lot of the Indigenous players, very close, always got along very, very well with the Indigenous boys at North Melbourne and other clubs, and they always joked with me and come up to me and said, well, when are you going to tell the world that, you've got Indigenous blood and all this sort of stuff. And I've just never wanted the attention of doing it or I guess really delving and finding out whether it's 100% true or whether it's not, or whether it's just something that, Dad was able to conjure up back in the day. So, I honestly don't know. But the fact, I guess, that my first cousins in Wagga right now are considered it, then I probably should look into it.
What you were talking about, absolutely. You're talking about your cousins. So tell us the story you told us last week, Duck, off air, about your uncle's kids. So this is your brother's children.
Yeah. So my dad's.
Sorry,
yes.
your dad's.
Your uncle.
Yeah,
sorry,
my uncle.
Let's get that right again. Your uncle.
Yeah, Uncle Ronnie. I'm sure he won't mind me. I don't think he listens to Triple M, but Uncle Ronnie has got twins and twin boys, and one is white coloured skin, very white, and one is very dark coloured skin, and they're actually twins. I guess they got asked that question a lot when they were young, and got, how are you guys? How your brothers, and you can sort of look like you do. So one was, like I said, looked Indigenous, and the other one didn't. But as we know, you can actually have very white skin and still have Indigenous blood. So I guess it's something that I'll have to delve into a little more, Howie.
Can I ask, Duck, is it it's your dad's mum who you suspect is Indigenous, did you ever meet your grandparents? Or
I met my grandmother on my dad's side, not my grandfather.
Right. So do you have any suspicions around where do you think it sort of comes from in your family tree?
It's dad's side, definitely dad's side. But I don't know and have never really delved into it.
And just before we go any further, it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal at all, but it's just something, probably because you're a footballer of high renown and Indigenous footballers are looked up so highly in our game that there's a link there, whether you have Indigenous blood or not. At the end of the day, as a normal punter on the street, who really cares? But it's due to your profile and the fact that you've done so much in the game is why we're now talking about it.
Greatest player in the game, pretty much in the history of the game. So, in your mind right now, say you decided to pursue this and like Lindsay Gilbey did, in your mind right now, what do you think the result would be?
Good question. I have no idea, Brownie. I have no idea. And once again, it's not, and I've not gone into it because of any other reason. Then I've just thought, leave it alone. Didn't want the attention or anything like that. And that's probably why I've never ever had this discussion publicly.
Do you think privately you'll follow it up now?
I think I might have to now. I mean, and for this reason, I mean, I think if I don't, then it's probably I'm a bit slack.
Do you know who is centre half forward in the Indigenous team of the century? Because they're going to have to move over to a flank. That could be the case.
Rewrite all the honour boards.
And to be honest, and that's not that I would think I would go into any of those positions.
It's not what you said to us last week.
Exactly what you said.
But it's because of all of those things, and there's so much water gone under the bridge. My career's over in terms of football and everything else. Part of the reason why I've never wanted to talk about it or bring it up, and like I said, Nathan and I know a lot of the Indigenous boys because they talk to me a lot about it when I see them in person, but I've never spoken about it publicly.
Duck, don't you think, if that is the case, it would be a wonderful thing for you and your family as Australians to be connected to this country in which you live?
No question.
To be...
Yep. I think more so for me, my two daughters and my son.
Absolutely.
You know, for their sakes, so they know, and then they can work out, you know, and I guess follow history like they
what
should.
What I like is you're in control and get to it in your time. No one pressure you to it.
I think
get to it in your own time.
Yeah, I think I've turned a blind eye to
Everyone speaks to their family and asks questions. Have you sat down and you would have discussed this with your brother?
I've discussed this with my brothers and my sisters.
And what do they think?
And well, my two brothers definitely think that we are Indigenous. My two sisters, like I said, if anyone was going to help me delve into this, it would be my two sisters. The two brothers probably not exactly bookworms or going to do anything, but I could certainly get my two sisters to help find out for absolute certain. But even a phone call to my uncle would be probably pretty easy to do.
And Daku, you said you were shared great friendships with some of the Indigenous teammates and opponents. Is there anyone in particular who you have sort of confided with or had this conversation with, or anyone who probably knows your story?
Yeah, probably Ronnie Burns and I have sat around and spoken about it a fair bit.
In Adelaide?
Yeah, but I sat around with Choppy, with Byron Pickett and Winston Abraham and all of those guys. We used to sit around and talk about it all the time when I was playing. But once again, it was just something that I felt that, I don't know, like I said, it was just something that I didn't want to burden people with or I don't know, take something away from someone else because if I was considered Indigenous, it was just, so they're the reasons why, Howie. And a little bit uncomfortable even talking about it now because I don't want to.
I know that you don't want to make it about you. People, we have this persona that, the Duck's the king, etc., but I know you get uncomfortable talking about yourself, and I know that it's no reflection on whether there is background or not. I hope for your sake that there is, and you're completely connected to this land in an even greater way.
Well, if it was to come back that 100% that it was the case, then certainly I would feel very proud to then pass that on to my children.
I think that's a great way to finish the conversation. Now, we don't like to be too serious on this show, but Your man Stephen Michael's the centre half forward of the Indigenous team of the century, and your man Mickey O is the full forward. And all of a sudden, they're starting to get the word through that maybe there might be a bit extra competition up forward.
Mickey's to the fourth pocket.
Hey, mate, really well spoken, Duck. Thanks for sharing with us.